Okay. Okay. So hi, Mr. Zapien. I first off, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about how you're connected to Boston Harbor Elementary School.
Well, first off, I was an employee there as a custodian at Boston Harbor for many years. I believe it was 4 years I was there. And then second connection is my son, Rocco Zapien, attends the school also. So a lot of people there actually don't know me by my first or last name. They just know me as Rocco's dad.
Rocco's dad in fourth grade, right?
That's great, correct.
Okay. All right. And so we've been talking at school about the engineering design process and about really it's about problem solving. So I thought we could hear a little bit about what your job is and then how you use problem solving in your job.
Definitely, definitely. Well, for the school district, my position right now is actually I'm the carpenter for the Olympia School District. So a lot of things that I deal with is actually attaching cabinets to walls or redesigning bookshelves. And first thing I got to do is actually most important tool that I carry is actually a pencil, so I can take notes. And second most important thing is a tape measure, which is the thing that I actually take measurements with. And so I could get exact measurements of the area that I'm going to be working in to actually build a cabinet or bookshelf. Then I got to pick my materials to see how strong my materials need to be. And then we actually get that design. First, I draw it out. I have to get it clear to actually get a process of how I'm going to construct it and how I'm going to attach it to a wall. The biggest thing in the schools to build something is safety. So everything has to be attached to walls, and inside of our walls, we have structural beams that we call studs. And each stud usually in our buildings are either 16 inches apart or 24 inches apart. So then I gotta take that into account of whatever design I'm making so I could actually have a way to attach it securely to the studs. That way, if there's an earthquake or there's a lot of weight on top of it, it won't collapse. So that's the majority of the things that we do at the schools. Second thing is actually we do a lot of playground inspections, make sure that swings are capable of withstanding certain weights while they're swinging, that our chains are not wearing out, because a lot of times a lot of moving parts get worn out. So we got to make sure those are actually secure and replaced whenever they need to be also.
Okay, so lots of testing and it sounds like when you're figuring out bookcases or cabinets or things, sometimes you have to figure out the design on your own and figure out your materials. You
Definitely.
don't, somebody doesn't just give you a design necessarily and say, build this. You kind of have to work with the space and the needs and.
Definitely. And the biggest obstacle actually in my job is imagination. So the way to actually process it is that you got to envision it in your head and process the way that you're going to build it. And not only do you have to build it where it's sturdy, but actually it has to be appealing to the eye also, because you don't want to build something that just looks like you just put something together that's going to function. So a lot of it is imagination on how you actually can create something that's not only aesthetically pleasing, but actual functional for the space that you're putting it into.
Right.
So in materials too, you got to keep in mind, because there's different types of materials you could use. You could use plastic fibers, you could use press board, you could use MFD, which is a composite press board, pretty much sawdust that's compressed into a laminated piece of sheet. Or you could use solid wood. Depending on what the space requires, you could choose your materials on what you're going to finish work is going to be like. So you could paint it, or you could get wood that's already laminated, which means that it has a surface that looks pleasing already. So a lot of things come into account before you actually start building.
Right. And then do you have a workshop that you work in the school district,
We
or how does
do.
that? Okay.
Yeah, we have a main shop. It's called Support Service Center. And there we have the carpenter shop, we have the plumber shop, we have our HVAC shops. We all collaborate together sometimes to help each other and help create the things that we bring into the schools. If I ever have a question or run into a situation where I don't know what I'm going to do, luckily we have a pool of employees that have been working with us for many years that I could actually go and ask questions to. So that's a great opportunity for me to actually not only advance my way of doing things because I have this pool of information that I could reach into. But it's actually a learning step for me every day also, because every day I'm facing something different that I'm actually having to problem solve. And so I'm lucky that we have a lot of people in our district that I could get information from also.
Yeah, so that collaboration piece. So you're not just doing it by yourself. Okay. And
Definitely.
do you ever build something, design something offsite, and then bring it and have to kind of rethink it a little bit, or is it always perfect?
Usually everything's pretty designed pretty well, since we actually sketch out everything and write down our measurements. But we do bring it into pieces, and sometimes things just don't work out. So sometimes we have to go and reprocess it. Either it didn't fit because we were a bit off. The tape measure sometimes is not exact. It has a little bit of flexibility in it. So if you're stretching it out, I have one here. Sometimes, here's the numbers, or to put it this way so you guys can see the numbers. When you stretch it out far, it will bend. And that has a lot to do with your dimensions. And if you're doing, this one's a 16-foot tape measure. If you extend it fully, it will flex. So you got to put that into mind too. But sometimes it just doesn't work out. So you got to just go and assess the problem as you're building it together. A good thing about these tapes too is every 16 inches on a wall, you see these, there is a little red mark on a 16. And that, what it is, it's a mark of when you start on a corner of a wall from the end to this side on the 16th is where you will find a stud in a wall. And that usually is a good indicator where you could actually harness something into a wall that's going to be secure. Yeah, so it's got a little bit of a cheat sheet on it also, which is pretty amazing for us.
That's great. Okay. So I was going to say, I think Mrs. Schwegler has some things that you've built in our office in Boston Harbor, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the kids could see some of your work in action just right there.
Definitely.
How did you become interested in doing this work?
You know, ever since I was young, first I started with deconstructing of things. I used to like to see how things were put together. Right. So I used to love just taking things apart. And then from then, as I got older, actually, my parents always were working in construction and cleaning. So we had tools available that I could actually just play around with. And I started building first simple things, such as just boxes to put my toys in. And luckily, my dad was okay with me doing that, just using some materials that were around the house, plywood, just cutting it to pieces. And then he would only let me use nails and a hammer because that was the safest thing. So that's how I kind of started interested in that. And mechanical skills, I started working on bikes. That was my way to get around. And so I started doing a lot of repairing older bikes. Even bicycles now, right now, are pretty expensive. So I used to go to a garage sale and then fix them up. And I got pretty interested in building things from a young age. It was pretty good. And the thing is too, is that you continue that and it helps with the imagination, such as what you need to actually process any kind of issues that come up.
Right. Yeah. Wonderful. So it's always been something that you've been interested in and
definitely. And I was lucky that my parents were really allowing me to explore things as that too also. And then as I got older, I learned that, you know, working for the trades is really fun too, because as I said, every day is a learning experience. Not every day are you doing the same thing. Every day is almost something different. So that's the most awesome thing about my job. And not only that, I get to work with kids, and I love kids. My son's at Boston Harbor. I love going there also. I got something special with that school.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we love you there. So, all right. And the other thing I want to ask is, were there certain things that you did in school that support your, I mean, you talked about measuring and the importance of designing, and were there things in school that really helped you with your work now?
Definitely. When I was in middle school, we had the ability to have a wood shop. And as an Olympia School District, we have that also. So that actually helped to develop my skills as I got older. And when I got into high school, I took wood shop and I followed that also. And I just really loved not only working with wood, but the smell of it. when you actually cut it and you get to build on something. And then not only that, then you build, I built a bread box for my mother.
Oh,
And then just completing it and handing it over as a gift. And her surprise of the abilities that I had at a young age, still working with wood, was really gratifying for me also. And
yeah.
being able to make something and give it to her was just the best feeling ever.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
definitely.
I totally understand. And in middle school, I mean, some of our fifth graders are almost there, right? And I know they are trained to use the power tools, and they use all table saws and drills and all the big equipment, and so they can really enhance their skill building and make some cool things. Okay.
Definitely.
All right. Well, is there anything else you want to share or think the kids should know?
I have another tool that I want to show and demonstrate.
Okay.
It's got a funny name. It's called a square, but it's actually a triangle.
Oh.
If you guys see it. The reason it's called a square is because this actually can make a square box using every edge on here, whatever way you put it. And also in the inseam right here, I don't know if you guys can see the numbers. If you put it on a piece of wood and you tilt it, it gives you your certain dimensions of angles of degrees that you could actually mark where you want to cut. And if you just put it along the edge right here, on the top edge right here, it gives you a 90-degree, which is a straight cut. Then you could actually have everything square when you build it together. So I just wanted to share that with you guys because I thought that was the weirdest thing when I was learning that a triangle is called a square.
It's called a square. So you always have your square ready.
Definitely.
With you,
always.
And your measuring
cuts.
tape.
Definite.
And a pencil.
And a pencil. Pencil's very important. And the imagination is the most important thing because you got to really think out your situations to see how you're going to resolve them.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you. Thank you. This is awesome.
Okay. We really appreciate it. So
okay, that's awesome.
I'll stop the recording here.